sometimes I have these little, like, subconscious thoughts that formulate into sentences. You know, those thoughts that aren't words, and then you put them into words. It was that really anyone that tells you how to live your own spiritual life is a fraud. They don't understand spirituality at all. Um, Not to me, at least, because I personally believe that spirituality is something only you find within yourself. And you can listen to everyone else, but it will never be authentic until you yourself find it in the way you need to. Um, and so it kind of, I don't know. I don't know how people will feel about that. That the idea that all religious or spiritual leadership is a scam. It's a fraud. Uh, so I'm gonna let people digest on that, and I want to talk a little bit about my own experience with spirituality and religion, like organized religion, or just religions in general, the exploration of religions. So I grew up in a very conservative, non denominational Christian home. Um, my dad is a Chinese Portuguese Canadian citizen, and my mother is a general mixture of white people who was born in Belleville, Illinois, in the USA, and I was born in Oklahoma at Rhema like near Rhema Bible School, which is where my parents met. So interesting. I feel like spiritual background to begin with. My mom came from a religionless family. They didn't have any. There was no religious or spiritual talk in her home. It wasn't anything anyone was concerned about. Her mother had grown up in like the Great Depression and stuff, and so you just had to do other things in life that were more pressing for survival. So it wasn't prioritized in my mother's childhood, and she found it in young adulthood and became passionate about it. My father lived a sinful criminal lifestyle in Canada and failed his entrance exam to become a doctor and kind of had like a life path change and went into the field of like audio equipment engineering type stuff, and it'd been a passion of his whole life, and so he is still in that field today. And but he had a religious experience as well and turned his life around and really has lived a very wholesome and good life, I feel like, since becoming Christian. I do think there's a lot of really toxic Christians out there in my experience, and you'll see as I tell my story more why. But my dad is, I think, one of the good Christians out there, and there are others that are like him out there, where they're not out there trying to press anyone. They understand what I'm going to come to. What I said in the beginning, what I'm going to come back to is that religion is spirituality, or religion is a personal connection to your sense of the divine. Not everyone's experienced the divine, I don't think. I went a long time in life before I did, and so I came into this world very American, Asian American, and Christianity was the religion I was raised in. But I had a very traumatic childhood despite what was presented on the outside. My mother was sexually abusing me and emotionally, verbally, a couple times physically, but not usually. I will say that. Some people face very rough physical abuse, and I am grateful to have not gone through that, but it does not minimize all the other traumas I went through, and I used to think it did for a long time. But religion was forced on me. I didn't know any better when I was a kid, but I never really liked it. I have this one memory where it's so funny looking back, making this video right now. There's this memory that's very core and one of my only like memories from going to the kids like church thing, and it was this this activity. They gave us a piece of paper and they showed us this finished product of a paper cup folded, right? I was a little kid and I'd never really seen that before. And I was like, oh, that's cool, like a paper cup. And they were like, here guys, here's a piece of paper, try to make the paper cup. And so the point of the activity was that none of the kids were going to be able to make it and they would need instructions. And so this was like a lesson in how you needed the Bible to like follow God or something. And the thing is that like I was sitting there trying and it took me a second, but I figured out how to do it without the instructions. And I showed them and they were like, oh. And I remember like being really confused at first as to like why they weren't pleased with me that I could make the cup on my own. And like then their speech happened and I was like, oh, but I did it without. So what is that? And I didn't ask anyone like, what does that mean for me? But I definitely wondered, you know? So like, and maybe that's just a stupid, like, maybe that's the failing of like the Bible school teacher. Like that's kind of not a good metaphor because there are going to be kids that can figure out. But I think it actually proves to my point that spirituality is something we have to achieve on our own, and sometimes we do need instruction from people, you know. Most people don't just go and get it on their own, you know, but sometimes people do. And I'm not saying that I am that way with spirituality at all, like, but I definitely got the paper and so it was a really bad metaphor for me and really undermined organized religion, at least in my mind, from a really early age. And as I got older and reached, like, you know, being a teenager, yeah, I was a rebel, sometimes a senseless rebel without a cause, rebel for the sake of rebellion, and that's foolish looking back, but, you know, it was something I needed to go through, and I don't really have any shame anymore for it, but, so I didn't like the religion that that was being forced on me at that point, because I had vocalized, like, I'd been forced to read the entire Bible, and I read it, and I said, it doesn't make sense. And I like got grounded for that. Because I was very adamant. I was like, this is stupid to think this is actually real. Like, I've read science fiction that was more real than this. Like, you know, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why are we worshiping this just blindly when there's some glaring, like, plot holes in a lot of these? And I have this traumatic memory, really, of like, I think I was like 15. I did not want to go to church. I was forced to go to church every single Sunday, and sometimes I had to go to the youth group like during the weekdays. Like, I was forced to go, and so I really resented church. And so I thought, therefore, I also resented my own spirituality, but I didn't realize that that's what I was doing, right? Because I didn't know that religion and spirituality were different, right? I thought they were one and the same. And so at that point in my life, I had this moment where I physically refused to go to church. I was like, no, and I sat on my bed, and my father physically tried to drag me to the car. And I said, I'm not having it. And I kicked him in the fucking nuts. And like, it's only funny in hindsight, really. It was not funny at the time. It was an act of desperation for what I see now was spiritual autonomy. Like, I wanted to have the right to figure out how I connected to divinity without being told how I had to do it, you know? What they were telling me didn't work for me. I still don't feel that Christianity works for me as a religion. Anyways, so yeah, it got physical, and I was forced into outpatient anger management classes after attacking my father, which obviously is very wrong, and I do, you know, see that. It is a little funny, but it's fucked up. I think I'm laughing. That's probably like a trauma defense mechanism as a way to cope, you know, to be perfectly honest, but because I'm shaking right now, just talking about it. It was intense, and it was scary, and I was desperate. And then I had to pay the price for, in my mind, trying to defend myself. That's what I was doing at the time. Looking back, I don't even know what else I could have done. I was so desperate in that moment. And I felt things very intensely during my teenage years. I'm sure everyone is kind of like that because all the hormones and stuff, but like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I felt emotions that most people didn't feel, and I felt them like regularly, like, you know, deep pangs of like suffering. But anyways, so with religion, I felt so much pain, and this Christianity structure did not bring me relief. It made me skeptical, and I did not see logic that made sense to me in it. And I don't hold anything against people who find logic in it and find relief and peace and guidance and wisdom in it. Like, I think that's really great for them, to be perfectly honest, and not like in a sarcastic way or anything. But like, I think forcing religion on anyone is morally incorrect, because I think spirituality is something that needs to be achieved on its own. And so when I turned 18 and decided to become homeless instead of live with my mother, because I'd ran away many times and I kept getting brought back by police officers because I was a minor. And so when I finally got to leave, I started like living in my car, and spirituality hadn't ever really been my thing. And I dabbled in psychedelics as a young adult, and had these really weird conflicting maps of reality that my brain had experienced. And it's been and still is a journey reconciling them, because my childhood map of reality was that all religion, all spirituality was bullshit, to be frank. That it was a tool used by the corrupt to harm the masses. And it was a very jaded and angry and hateful view towards religion. And while I don't necessarily have that same view for organized religion anymore, I still have a general disdain for it, because I think it's in the opposite nature of true spirituality to have organized religion. I think it's like a oxymoron, you know? Organized religion, because it's supposed to be individual spirituality. And I think any true, genuine person who is perhaps more advanced than the average human in spiritual ways is not going to be like, come follow me and look what I'm doing and let me tell you how to live your life. They're not going to do that. That's a scam. That is 100% not real. That is a narcissistic person or a delusional person, and do not follow them. They're gonna somehow ruin your life. Don't fall for that. I've seen a lot of people that are that way, and I've seen a lot of people fall prey to them, and I have fallen prey to people that way as well, and that's how I know, and it sucks, and I really wish it didn't happen to people, but it seems like it does a lot. Like, all those people that call themselves, like, shamans, and all they do is, like, sell drugs, like, that's not... Or when they do Reiki, where they, like, hold their hands over you and don't touch you. And it's like, the thing about Reiki is... this is a tangent, but the thing about Reiki is it's universal life force. Oh, but you have to have Reiki practitioners to access the universe. So I'm not part of the universe, bitch? Like, no, if you're a genuine Reiki practitioner, if you want to hold that title, I think your mission in life is to show people how to access the universal life force, because it's meant for everyone, and the universe needs everyone on it to be universal. Like, you know, like, and you're not gonna charge for that. Okay, but anyways, charging for spirituality is not in the nature of spirituality. I just need to emphasize how much I hate people putting spirituality behind a paywall. Like, that is like the ultimate dystopian future to me. Like, I don't really understand it. So yeah, I had okay, tangent, going back to the main line, my religious and spiritual experience. So after doing a bunch of psychedelics and having some really interesting experiences that did not vibe with my previous map of reality, I had two conflicting maps of reality, and I really genuinely was like, okay, well, I think I'm crazy. I had about like 3 to 6 months where I was like, I think I'm crazy. Like, I had a psychedelic experience, and I was like, I think I'm God. And like, luckily the skeptic in me saved me from absolute psychosis. And I think that needs to be talked about, is that, like, sure, psychedelics can get you in touch with other maybe planes of reality, or thoughts or ways that your brain can think, and thoughts that you never would have thought, but like, it is a really slippery slope to psychosis, especially if you do not have a strong sense of reality, or skepticism, or comprehension of metaphors, because the subconscious and the intangible, if you get lost in it, you lose root in the physical, and that's when we call you crazy. And it sucked. I mean, and that's probably a very offensive term. Okay. That's when we call you not rooted in reality, though, because reality is the agreed upon hallucination that everyone is seeing. Because it's all hallucination, right? Whatever. It's all simulation, but reality is the one we all tend to agree on. The majority says, yeah, this is real. So I went through a period where I was just so unsure because I had this completely different map of reality of like what existence truly was. I saw things that I still don't really know how to describe today, but I have come to understand were simply the subconscious's metaphors for like a deeper understanding of the simplicity and the complexities of life in a way. And so I had that experience and I felt very in touch with a lot of like somehow innate knowledge that I hadn't really had before, or insights or like curiosities that I'd never experienced before, because I was completely closed off to spirituality because I was closed off to organized religion. And so I started to seek enlightenment, is what I called it. And looking back, I'm like, oh, cringe. Because I don't... Not that I ever thought I was going to, like, be Buddha or anything, but, like, I don't even really know what I meant by that. I guess I just was seeking spiritual connection, spiritual understanding, and I only knew to call it enlightenment, like, seeing beyond what I had already known to be true. And so... yeah, I learned a lot of things because I was inspired with curiosities that I'd never had before, and I learned a lot, and it got to a point where it was almost blinding seeing so much light, and that's, I think, where we can sometimes also get stuck, where we get dislodged from reality and we're stuck in other possibilities that, sure, they're real and they're valid somewhere, but they're not happening here. And so I kind of pulled back. I stopped doing psychedelics for pretty much since there's been a couple but like it's not, I used to, I think, abuse psychedelics looking back, really. And I just got into all that, and I needed to come back to reality. And then after stopping that, I kind of realized that, like, none of that spiritual, otherworldly, astral, like, none of that really mattered if I wasn't also okay in the physical realm. And so I had to learn how to take care of myself better here. And so that has been, like, a really long journey, I think, like, nearly a decade, of taking care of the physical reality. And I mean, I think maybe the last 5 years has been like integrating them together, but still, like, it's a process, and you can't have one without the other, because I feel like I kind of dipped my toes in too far into the like otherworldly realms, the ones of infinite possibility and creativity that don't necessarily have physical representation here, and it's just, you can get lost in that. And I think I think if I had a choice, I probably would have chosen to try to, like, build up to that rather than, I feel like I got, my chakras lined up backwards. Like, I had the up here, and then I didn't have any of the physical chakras. I didn't know how to run my body. I just had the concepts, and it really means nothing without the practical representation. It's in the nothingness, really, because I've come to find out that, nothingness is everything. I mean, if we think about zero, which is supposed to be nothing, right? Our physical representation of zero. Zero is actually an infinite equation, right? It's every positive and every negative integer that is infinite in itself. It's, them all, it's both of them together. It's nothing and everything. And so what we do have control is how we steer our experience through life. And so, sure, we can get caught up in endless realities that don't exist here, but, like, it's not healthy. And then, inversely, what I'd had before, so negatively rooted in the physical, and now I had to change into positively rooted into the physical, because I was very physically toxic, I think, for myself in a lot of ways. And I'm still learning how to become healthier in the physical, that includes mental health, I think, too, because the brain is just part of the physical body. But yeah, so I personally, and I don't ever want to tell anyone how to find your own spiritual path, but I just want to point out that what I noticed in myself with hindsight, which is, they say 2020, was that I had to get out of my negative physical attachment to life, experience a bit of the intangible aspects of life that were worth living for, in a sense, and then find my way back to, okay, now I see these, now I have hope and stuff again, and what can I do to naturally get to this point of like bliss that I'd experienced in these psychedelic trips? How can I build that up to where that's my normal state in life and I don't have to be on drugs to get there, you know? And it starts at the bottom. It starts, you know, slowly building up, and so we have to take care of our body, you know? So that includes shelter, food, clean water, clean air, clothes, housing. I don't know if I already said that. We have to take care of the body. Doctors and dentists and eyes too, because for some reason that's not part of the body. But whatever, health insurance. Love you, Luigi. But anyways, so we have to take care of the body and the mind, which I understand why people separate it from the body, but we have to also remember is part of the body too, because the mind can have issues when the body has issues, right? They're very connected. And then there's our sense of soul, our spirit, our spirituality aspect of ourselves. This is something everyone possesses, whether we are cognizant of it or not. And coming to understanding and peace with that part of ourselves in unison with the mind and body, I think, is as close as I can understand to what enlightenment looks like in a practical sense, not in like some story about Buddha sense, you know? And like that doesn't mean having no sadness or no anger or jealousy or any of these things that are negative, and doesn't mean having no happiness or joy, or, you know, it means being, I think it means being self-aware enough to call ourselves out when we're acting in unconscious ways and choose a different way. And in that way is the ultimate autonomy. And that's why I don't think any one person can really tell us how to do that for ourselves. Finding who you are and what brings you joy, and how to really combat your own negative thoughts, how to balance yourself. No one person can really teach us that. And so, like, after, you know, I became a mother and like wasn't doing psychedelics and was like on this journey of building my physical life up to my own standards of what I felt I needed, you know, then I went to college and I took these different classes about like different religions and even like things like stress management and just, you know, my own, what I didn't really realize at the time was still part of my journey into spirituality, but was definitely an integral part into my spiritual journey, was taking care of the physical realm and really getting like my ducks in a row and bettering myself and putting myself to the test in a way, but in like a manageable, not unreasonable way where I'm always setting myself up for failure in a healthy way. Physical health, mental health, imagine that. What an intangible concept, but it exists, and it's just really difficult to maintain because it's not a one and done. It's like a constant process. It's retraining yourself. It's readjusting what life and reality is for you. And so, when we have people that try to do that for others, we call it cults. You know, when people are trying to create your map of reality and choose what you believe, it's a cult. And so I say this to people in my real life, and maybe it's inflammatory or controversial, I don't know, but I truly do think that really the only difference between a cult and a religion is if the person leading it, like the main person that everyone's following, if they're dead or alive. So, because, okay, think about it this way, like when Buddha, you know, supposedly was alive, it had like, you know, the culty vibes, like, oh, this person is gonna, you know, whatever. But then of course he was, you know, not a fraud and all that. But then as soon as he dies, it's like a big religion, you know, supposedly, right? So, oh, it's okay. It's a religion. He's not profiting off of it because he's not alive. So it can't be bad. It can't be criminal. But like, you have to look behind who are the people propping that figure up to see who's really profiting. So in a way, religion's kind of a cult, but that's a very controversial take, and I don't want to die on that hill either. I just half joking, but really though, cults, have a main person that is profiting from them, and that is why when they're alive, they're able to actively manipulate people who believe them, whereas opposed to like in organized religion where like maybe a pastor is in charge of the church, ultimately like God and Jesus, these people who are not real physically now anyways, are the ones in charge. So, and the Bible kind of like reigns supreme. So if your pastor is acting in a way that goes against what's in the Bible, you can be like, oh, this person's a fraud, they're not part of the real religion or whatever. So it does keep out like individual manipulators more, I think, than obviously a cult does. But many religious groups are technically able to be classified as like high control groups. And they're given a free pass because their religion's following God, who is not a real person, so it's okay. But it's like, who's the person that is putting up the image, the tangible image of God that you're following, And so, while I don't hate organized religions, I do think that they are very beneficial for a lot of people who are lost spiritually. I think, if anything, they're supposed to be like a jumping off point for your true spiritual journey. Like, and, I don't think there's anything wrong with, groups of people congregating who believe similar things, but I think like those mega churches, I just don't see how that's ethical. I don't see how that's spiritual. How are you giving the same advice to all of these people and expecting them all to believe 100% what you believe? Like, I don't know. Because I think, too, the attitude from religious leaders is that if you don't believe this, you're going to hell, or, like, whatever the religion's version of that is. My most in-depth experiences with Christianity, obviously. But, yeah, like, threatening people with eternal damnation is not, like, my jive for finding spiritual peace. That doesn't motivate me to be happy or joyful. So I've had to find it on my own, and I truly, genuinely think that everyone has to find it in their own way, and it's going to look a little different, or a lot different, for everyone. But I do think that, we'll have to go through, it's not just going to be a one and done, we're going to have to go through a journey. It's going to be a path of understanding and learning and leveling up, and I do think in a way it's similar to the spiral staircase. You may feel like you're going round and round, but you're gaining new layers and levels of perspective. And so you have a more in-depth understanding of the journey in its entirety, and that brings you a sense of peace as you go further. And so, yeah, I just wanted to rant for 30 minutes about, it's a very heated topic for me, apparently. Not apparently, just it is. Yeah, because it's a personal journey, and so I will leave you with that. What do you think about organized religion trying to tell people how to find spiritual bliss and peace, and what makes you right and wrong and good and bad, when the whole point of, I think, finding peace is learning to let go of judgment, not calling things good or bad, and really just accepting how they are now and responding in a way that makes you feel like you're doing the best you can. That's being present, not focusing on, oh, if I do this, I'm a bad person, I'm going to hell. That's not how people find peace in my experience. Never understood the term God-fearing. If I fear something, I'm not worshiping it. Like, I might pretend to respect it out of fear, but if I'm truly fearful, I'm looking for any chance to escape. I don't want to be around, like, something I'm afraid of. I'm not gonna try and stick around. I'm gonna try and escape. That's not respect. And I want to respect something I worship, right? That just kind of like makes sense. But I could go on for probably another 30 minutes, and my phone doesn't even have that much space. So I'm going to end here. I think spirituality is something that only you can really experience for yourself, and you can listen to all the religious leaders and everyone who is on their own spiritual journey. But even someone decades into their deep spiritual journey, they can only tell you how they got there. They can't tell you how you'll get there. No one can tell you how to get there. And it sucks to really realize that, because it's kind of scary. But I think if you look back, you'll realize you've already been on your journey, especially if you're coming to a 30-minute long video here of me talking about spirituality and religion. So yeah, I would love if anyone wants to comment and engage with me and just share your own bit of your spiritual and religious journey. I would love to hear other people's paths, because I think the more stories we hear from others, really, it only really benefits all of us more, because we see another facet of infinite possibility, and it enriches our lives. So yeah, I really encourage people to comment and just share with me what you're going through now or something. Yeah, I hope you have a great day. Bye.